Welcome to Winners, Wallets, and Worldviews, the only show that's going to teach you
how to be somebody.
Where in your life did you learn that you're not good enough?
Take what you're most passionate about and what you're most fearful of, and what is the plan to overcome that fear, and what is the plan to enact that passion.
Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome to Winners, Wallets, Worldviews. I am your host, AJ Armstrong. You can follow me on Instagram at AaronArmstrong33, or you can go to my website, AaronJArmstrong.com, and find out all sorts more about me, what I offer as far as coaching packages, where I'm speaking next, and all the different podcast guests you guys see on this show. So, before I jump into the introduction for our incredible guest today, I have one quick announcement to make for you all. And Marissa and I, Tim Ferriss always talks about creating the product, creating the service that you guys need that you can't find anywhere. That's really what being a true entrepreneur is finding that product or service that you need that you can't find and it's not out there yet. So you got to go create it. Well, Marissa and I think that we've finally figured out what this is. And we're so excited. We're actually going to be launching this coming up this summer. The only catch is the only way you guys can get access to what this is via my email list. So if you go to aaronjarmstrong.com/email, you guys can sign up for my email list where we're going to be announcing all of this stuff coming up, and we're really excited. It's going to be a whole new branch of Armstrong Ventures. It's going to totally build into a totally new thing. We're so excited. I can't talk too much in detail yet. If you want to get the details, you got to go to aaronjarmstrong.com/email. I'm so excited to bring this to you guys. We have created what we think is going to be one of the most incredible things coming up in the short future here. So without further ado, I'm going to be announcing here my incredible guest that I was so excited we finally got a chance to have him on. So his name is Anthony Trucks. Now, Anthony Trucks is a serial entrepreneur, and he's got a very serious superpower, and that power is to navigate life's shifts, whether they're good or bad, with grace and optimism. And he's created this wonderful company, and it's called Modifidentity. And this is a company focused on helping people find out who they are and develop them into who they can be through modifications in their own identities. So he's a gym owner, an international speaker, a shift coach, former NFL athlete. He was in NBC's American Ninja Warrior, and he's a loving father and husband. And he does this all after being given away at 3 years old and fighting his entire life to find out who he is. Most of us do that, guys. We struggle with this identity, and this is what he helps us do. So he has overcome many challenges to truly find out who he is and what he was created to do on this planet. And a gift he now gives to others through fitness and coaching is the fundamentals of life. So guys, listen very carefully. We really enjoyed having him on as a show, and this is one of the most exciting episodes that you will see. So once again, without any further ado, welcome to the show. All right, everybody, welcome to Winners, Wallets, Worldviews. I am your host, AJ Armstrong. You can follow me on Instagram at AaronArmstrong33, or you can go to my website, AaronJArmstrong.com. Today, we have an awesome guest. His name's Anthony Trucks. Now, Anthony is a former NFL athlete. He's a life coach. He's a speaker. He's been on NBC's American Ninja Warrior, and he's also a loving father and husband. And guys, his resume goes so deep and so far back that we're going to hopefully just chip away at a little bit of it here today. So thank you so much, Anthony, for coming on the show. Very excited to have you on today.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be on, to share, to talk, man. This is that's what I live for.
This is awesome. And I think, just as talking to you a little bit in the pre-show, like you just bring so much energy to everything that you do, different guests come on at different times and they kind of all have their own flavor, but what keeps you with just so much positive energy and optimism like that?
It's I think it's always a matter of looking at what like life could have been. For me, I grew up in a really tough place, so I think I'm always in this mindset of perspective, and my filter of how I see the world is way different than most people. So that I always wake up and I'm genuinely happy to be here. So I'm gonna go ahead and choose to be that. And also, I choose how to control my emotions. Believe me, I get a lot of crappy stuff. We all get crappy stuff. But I always choose to have this perspective of, I would never call it naivety. I'm never completely oblivious, but I'm always aware, I get to choose how the next moments of my life are, even though this moment right now sucks.
Yeah, it's almost like being so present that you can just kind of be in it and enjoy it.
Yeah, my wife hates it, but hey, it works for me.
Well, that's awesome, man. Well, thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah.
I guess kind of going back, I want to bring the listeners up to speed on your story and your history. So I know that you kind of ran into something when you were about 3 years old is when it all kind of started for you. And like, bring me back to your childhood and kind of how that's brought you into today.
Yeah, man. I think for me, a lot of the unique parts of my life are that, like, I've had my own experiences, but people can relate through the emotional connection. Like for me, I was given away at 3 years old in foster care. So that feeling of like less than or not good enough or worried about tomorrow, like, it's just those feelings. I had those to begin my life, and my mom gave me and my three siblings away. We apparently weren't good enough for her for some aspect, who knows? And then I remember bouncing around from like 3 to 6 years old in a bunch of different horrible houses. Like I was beaten, I was starved, I was tortured, just some heinous things. And this was between the ages of like 3 and 6. So by 6 years old, like I was just a really kind of like off the cuff kid. I just had no respect for other people. I was really mean, and I was negative because the world had been mean and negative. And there's always this desire we have as humans to want something that we can't have. And so that void really gets filled with just craziness. And so for me, I wanted love from my mom that she didn't give me. So from 6 to 14, I was in the same household. I finally got put to a good home. Unique thing is I am still the only black person in an all white family. Although my sister married a black guy. So now I got like a brother. so it worked out. But yeah, man. So, I've had this weird dynamic of life where I've always had to navigate, like, who the world am I in this situation? Like we all do. At times we have these new things that happen upon us. I call them "oh shift" moments. Like, "oh shift, this is awesome," or "oh shift, this sucks." and literally, like, in those moments, you have to figure out, like, who am I? How do I show up in this? How do I not fall apart? And so for a lot of years, that was my journey, just always navigating craziness. At the same time I got adopted, I picked up football. I sucked at first, but I was like, "oh, shift, this is awesome to hit people, not get in trouble." But "oh, shift, it sucks that I can't do this very well because I suck." And I figured I'd go through that journey. And then at the same time, my mom got diagnosed with multiple sclerosis and had a weird dynamic. And in high school, I kind of found an anchor, which was for me a football thing. And I tied back into it, and I figured out how to get great at it by putting a ton of work in before I knew I'd be good at it, which is the thing you have to do. And it panned out, man. I got a football scholarship to play football at the University of Oregon. So go Ducks, played there at a blast. Had my son at 20 years old, another navigation of my identity of like, how do I deal with this off shift moment? Although, just so people know, like, I love being a father. And even back then I was like, hell yes, I'm gonna be this dad. I get to give back to a life that in a way that wasn't given to me. So I've never had this, separation of wanting to be a dad. Love it. I have 3 kids now, and it's a blast, man. But then it was still difficult because I'm a full-time college athlete. I'm a full-time college student. My wife's a full-time college athlete who followed me from high school, my high school sweetheart. And her family was funny. Her family said, "hey, you can go up there, but just don't get pregnant." And sure enough, so we made it work though, man. My wife got her master's, summa cum laude. Like, I played in the NFL. I was blessed to play with the Buccaneers, Redskins, and Steelers. I tore my shoulder in my 3rd year, unfortunately. Came home, opened the gym because my degree's in kinesiology, and ran that into the ground a couple times and kept figuring the whole business world out because I really didn't want to have a job or a boss anymore. And it was just, it was tough because, when you get out of the NFL or you get out of any sports, you're behind the ball in the work world. Like, you don't have experience. You got people who've been in there since they were 18. So I'm like as many as 8 to 10 years behind my peers trying to navigate this world with a really bad ego. And again, I had to have this whole identity change, like the shift of who I was. Because I was no longer Anthony the football player. Like, it's sometimes we're no longer, Tim the father, or Susan the mother, or the person has a great job or great health or whatever it is. And so that shift for me was really difficult to navigate, but I had to like refine myself. And I did something you probably shouldn't have done, which I dove into one area and neglected other parts of my life. And marriage fell apart, family fell apart, and that for me was a really tough hit. I'd already lost my identity. My business fell apart. And so I legitimately got to a point where I was like, this just hurts too bad. Like, your brain can't always differentiate physical and emotional pain. And for me, I had this moment where everything just hit me in the chest. And I drove off one night, I sent a text to my friends and family. I said, "please tell my kids who their father was," and a really bad moment. And it was at that bottom moment where I kind of wised back up. I had some people pour back into me. I was obviously safe. Nothing crazy happened. And I finally found the direction that my life was supposed to go. And I've been on this path ever since to realize that in that moment, I had a buddy walk up and say, when I thought I'd almost lost you, like, I threw up. And that's a friend of mine. I was like, it's a buddy. And he's like, the reason I almost had this happen was just because I thought I was losing a hero.
Yeah.
I was like, well, how are you a hero to a buddy? And I was like, what do you mean by that? He says, man, nobody says anything to you, but watching what you've gone through, your story, like, everybody knows what you've gone through, but what you do, they're like, dude, you are just like this walking, talking like hero to us. And so for me, it was this weird thought of like, man, I'd never been doing anything for anybody else besides my family and me. But accidentally, I'd been able to help this person and multiple people apparently by just sharing who I was and living. So I was like, man, like, what if I did this on purpose? It was a legitimate change in my perspective of what my purpose was here. And it really took a perspective for me on like, well, all this craziness that God had put in my life. I'm a man of faith. And I believe that he put me in all these crazy situations that at the time, like I couldn't stand. And I still to this day, I'm like, it sucked, but I have a great appreciation because he also gave me the ability to come out of it, to have strength to walk through it, to be able to have a passion to share it, to have a heart to be transparent and like a genuine care for people. Like I'm a regular dude. Like I may have done a whole bunch of irregular things, I guess we'll call it. But at the end of the day, like I got a wife and kids and I got to pick up poop in the backyard. Like I'm a regular dude, right? But I have this super irregular desire to give back to the world in a way that's caused many fights in my marriage. It's caused headaches with my friends. But at the end of it, it's like, I'm not going to go by the wayside and waste whatever gift I was given that can benefit this world in some way. And so I push and I grind, not even for me most of the time, but just making sure that I reach the person who will never meet me in person, but they'll be changed by something I say.
That's incredible. What an incredible story. I mean, there's so much good stuff there. And it's like, I'm trying to figure out where I want to go back and ask the question. I think, bring me back to, let's go back to where you were kind of in that spot. I think a lot of people can relate to this, whether it might be graduating from college or, former veterans when they're transitioning out of the military, or people who want to quit a job and become full-time entrepreneurs. You talk so much about this shift that needs to happen, and walk me through that process about where does the shift need to be? How do you get on your right path? Sometimes people are forced from a low point into a new direction, or sometimes it might be the opposite, right? Sometimes they might be going downhill or something like that. So tell me a little bit about the shift, man.
Definitely, man. Well, the shift's what I call an identity shift. And identity is kind of like, it's the programming to your brain. Like if you think about the TV show Westworld, the only difference between those robots is the programming. If the program operates differently, they'll be a phenomenal cowboy or a seamstress, right? So my thing is like, well, we just have these identities that we accidentally let get created, but we never actually chose how we create these things. And they run our life like autopilots. So what I realized was years ago, for me, when I got to that moment, was I'd kind of been on autopilot. I really wasn't in control of who I was or my actions. And really, your identity, if you ask what an identity is, it's your beliefs, your thoughts, and your actions. That's literally it. Like most people, like, who am I? And they'll list off the beliefs they have, or the actions they do, or the thoughts they have, right? I'm this powerful person, or I believe that we should all do this. Like that's what people literally will rattle off. And so I was like, okay, if that's the base of me, like how are these operating? And what's the goal for me to have in life? And what I realized was a lot of people, they have this goal for entrepreneurship to buy a yacht, buy a Ferrari, and and then that's what people do. I want these Gucci glasses and a belt while I sag my pants. Anyway, whole different conversation. What I realized was like, I just want peace, man. That's it. Sure. I just want peace. I want my family. I want my health. I want freedom. I want to have time to do what I want when I want to do it. And I'm not talking about like going to egg houses. I'm just saying like, I want to be able to sit in my backyard and like sip some tea in the morning and not be stressed that the bills aren't getting paid. I don't need $1 million for that. I just need to have enough to be able to be comfortable, right? And so meet my goals and not really compare myself to the world. So what I look at is like my whole world is I help people make the shift to build a better life. And that's what I call a better life, physically, professionally, and personally. Like, is your life better than the place you want it? And so where it starts is you go back to those places where you're completely lost and you're alone and you're afraid. You feel like nobody gets what you're going through. And it's like this complete island feeling. And for me, like I've had it multiple times. It's unfortunately and fortunately, it started when I was 3. I had the same feelings. And the first thing that we typically do in those moments is we place this kind of pain internally and say, well, it's all our fault, and so, I'm not good enough. I'm not great. And we have this weird mental cognition. And we actually have this, I call it the 7 operational stages. It's a program that we operate through. And once you grasp this wheel, I'll walk you through real quick, you'll understand the next stage. But the first part is we have these identities we believe ourselves to be. Sure. It's called anchors. These are the traits of who I am. I'm a father, I'm a coach, I'm a podcaster, I'm a dad, I'm a coach, whatever it is, right? You have these anchors. From that, you have this certain kind of collection of beliefs that are rooted from that. If I believe the world's amazing, then my beliefs are going to be based in what the world is amazing for, right? I have these beliefs that come from that. From the beliefs that lead to the ways that I think. I have thoughts wrapped around this concept of, this is how I think, and we'll call them stories that we tell, right? So I have these stories that get crafted and created. Then from there, it rolls to the actual feelings I have, because the story running in your head makes you feel a certain way about the world. If I think all women are bad, then my feelings towards women are horrible, right? It's a random concept. And then from there, from those feelings, I take action. That's why we're emotionally driven characters and creatures. So it's like, if I'm angry, I take an angry action. If I'm happy, happy action, right? But they lead to our actions, and the actions create the outcomes that we take. And what happens is the outcomes we get, if we have these actions create these outcomes, what happens is the outcome is going to be a result of how good the action was, right? So if my thoughts are negative and my feelings are negative, then my actions are half actions, half effort. So my outcome sucks. And the outcome creates your environment.
Yeah.
And what environment that you live in is what you believe to be your identity and who you are, because it's a physical world of what you see every day. So if I already believed I was horrible at something, well, then my beliefs suck. My stories in my head suck. My feelings suck. My actions suck. My outcomes have to suck. Therefore, my environment sucks. And I keep re-anchoring that I suck, right? And it's this horrible negative cycle. And so a lot of us, we never think like, well, what do I have to change it? And literally you take one of those areas and change them. And for me, I always start with the actions. We can't force our brains to think any faster or absorb information quicker or change emotion immediately, but we can actually control the activities, and the activities create the outcomes, and the outcomes can create the environment, and I can change my entire belief structure off of what I see to be real. And so what I first do is I look at people and I tell them this concept of what's called 95-5. We spend 95% of our day, and when problems go wrong, thinking about the problem, eating ice cream, watching bit TV shows to pretty much distract ourselves, and 5% of the time getting out of it. We just sit there and we let it stew. And it's like, I don't want to be here, but you're doing nothing to get out of the hole, right? It's like weird. So I was like, well, what if we flip it on its head? What if I spent 95% of the time taking action against my desire to, and 5% of the time thinking about it? What happens is you get out of the hole much faster. You have a much different experience of your world, and everything just changes. So it's like, it's a matter of just what actions we put into place. And it's usually micro actions, not vast, crazy actions, but micro actions. And so if you take those micro actions, it flips that wheel reverse. You start having positive outcomes, which leads to a different identity, which leads to different beliefs and thoughts and feelings and actions and outcomes. And that's how it all spins. And that really is the role. But the problem is most people are in a space where they're incapable of admitting that they're not perfect right now.
Yeah.
And,
that's the wheel. So that makes sense. I think, one of the things could you maybe give us an example of a micro action that you could take, something that's really simple to get you kind of out of that pattern? Oh, perfect. So a lot of people have these problems with, let's say, exercise, right? I can't exercise very well. Sure.
And what we do is we try to take these big actions. I'm going to go and work out next week and I'm going to get in shape and right? And then what happens is we get to Monday.
We've all been there.
And it's like, oh, I don't want to do anything because I got to go and get clothes, and I got to find a place to work out, and I got to go and, find a time that works, and I got to make sure I can fit my schedule. All these little things no one thought about that are really the micro actions you should have took. So we pretty much clear like an hour for our life to do something that takes 10. And then you're met with this massive wall and you're like, oh my gosh, this sucks. And so what do? We revert back to our homeostasis where we feel comfortable. And that's usually not good. We all have homeostasis, a level of comfort that we operate at that give us an outcome. And if it's low, your output's low. If it's high, your output's high. But regardless, it feels the same emotionally. And so the micro actions are, well, if I'm going to have this goal of getting in shape, well, maybe I spend an hour on the computer clicking around to find an exercise place or some equipment that I actually would like to do. Then I'm going to go and take a leisurely afternoon to buy some good clothes, because now I'm invested. And when you invest in something, you want a return. So I'm going to use this stuff. And then I'm going to go and try out some places to see like what actual place I like working out. So I'm going to drive around and take a couple free trials. Then I'm going to go and I'm going to take a choice of a class I'm going to do. And I'm going to start slow. I'm going to go in there once a week. And then I'm going to go and find some food that I might like to eat. Now, here's the thing too. Don't go throw everything in your kitchen away. Again, a micro action is, if I eat out every night, I'm going to start eating in once a week, right? Or I'm going to start eating in twice a week. And then if I don't know what to shop for, everybody's like, well, Anthony, what kind of nutrition should I have? Or what exactly should I eat? I used to have a gym, obviously, so this is one realm for me. And I'm like, well, do you eat perfectly now? No. Well, first off, start eating better, right? You don't need an amazing diet. Just go to the grocery store, shop on the outsides, on the top and bottom of aisles. That's where the healthy food is at. Start eating that consistently. Then we'll talk about what we put into that diet. But it's all a matter of micro actions you do over time. And what's cool is we as humans have what's called investment bias. The more that we do something, the more we don't want to be wasted time. We do it in relationships, we do it in careers, where it's like, well, I've been in this relationship for 10 years. I don't want to leave. It'll all be for nothing. Like, no, it won't. Why would you prolong the pain just because you've been in pain for so long? So what I look at is the investment bias. We usually do negatively with it, but it can be a powerful positive too. If you say, hey, I'm going to do these micro actions and I'm going to invest a little bit of time over, the next week, 2 weeks, and I'm going to get 10, 15, 20 hours towards my goal of getting in shape. I may not be completely doing all the time working out just yet, but now I'm like 20 hours deep. Like, all right, well, I don't want to have had that time be wasted. So I stay the course and I reach the goal. Whereas the person who woke up on Monday and said, I'm going to get in shape, they spent 20 minutes thinking about it, and it's easy to drop it. So when you spend time investing in this, it allows you to stay the course and get the results you're looking for.
Yeah, there's so many good things with that, because I mean, it's kind of the same thing when you're starting to look at yourself and you're progressing in a way, right? I mean, not that I believe in it, but when you look at the scale and you can see that you're losing weight, that's one way where you can start to say, wow, I'm actually making progress. And that's an interesting, investment bias to bring it up like that, because it's the same kind of, I mean, we can all totally relate to when you start seeing progress in something, you are more likely to follow through.
Yeah.
It's just, it's really good. So, well, that's awesome, man. So I was really excited to hear it. So bring it back to, so we have kind of the action piece of it, right? So you kind of are going along the lines of like action's kind of the key, taking massive action in micro commitments. You have these big goals. You want to break them down into something smaller, more tangible that you can knock out very simply. Yeah. And then slowly over time, you can progress. Do you think there's any value in, going back and re-identifying with something, or how do you go about that? I mean, so through action, or do you do it in association with it, or how does that look?
Yeah, well, it's always through action, because action is the only thing that gives an adjustment or a feeling. Because most people, you want to have this confidence internally. Because when I say identity, it's not that you're like, oh, this is who I think I am. It's like, no, that's who I literally am, right? When you have that kind of section of in your head of like, that's who you are, it's beyond confidence. It's an ownership of who you are. And I'm gonna kind of give this to you twofold. So think about like a stick in the middle with a spinning orb around it, right? We have this pole, the spinning orb. Well, what happens is that pole is your identity. It's who you are. And the spinning orb is in fact your ego. And your ego is this protector, and it protects your identity, which is your internal congruency with its actions. So if you say I'm a phenomenal mom, what happens is your spinning orb ego, whenever a moment comes up that can challenge that identity, it will not let it happen. So for example, if like it's middle of the night, 3 o'clock in the morning, you have work at 6, but your kid gets up and they're sick. What do you do as a phenomenal mom? Well, my identity as a great mom, I'm going to get up. I'm going to take care of my kid. I'm going to take him to the doctors. I don't care if I get home at 5:59. I'm getting to work at 6, because that's what a good mom does. Now, and in that situation, some people will say, how do you do that? You're crazy. And for her, she's like, it's just who I am.
Yeah.
And so what happens is you naturally flow with your mindset and your habits. It all kind of, it moves and grooves. And so when it comes down to that aspect of like, just being that individual, it's so much easier if you realize like the identity portion is literally an anchor to who you are. And if you can get in that anchored portion, the rest of the actions take place. And I guess when it comes to actions, there's some frameworks that I work through with my clients, but you first have to do like what I call, it's like dissection of your identity, like your ideal identity. So ideal is like the perfect, great identity you want. Most people have never took a step back and said like, who I really like want to be like? Yep. Not that I want to be that person. Who do I really want to be like? Who do I 10 years from now want to be like? And what you actually have to do is dissect it. And so I look at the actions, thoughts, and beliefs like I referenced earlier. And it's actually this kind of, I use a Venn diagram. So picture 3 circles intertwining, right? At the top, you have your beliefs. Bottom left, you have your actions. Bottom right, you have your thoughts. And where these all intersect in the middle is your ideal identity. When your ideal identity is aligned perfectly with those, you have a good ability to be great. Like you have the chance, because you're rolling in, your thoughts are aligned, your beliefs are aligned, your actions are aligned, you're killing it. And those are the people that we look up to. And it's like, man, it looks like it's so easy for them. Like, how does it look so easy, right? They have success and it seems like it just rolls off their back. And really what it is they have an alignment in those areas, and their level of what we call homeostasis, it just clicks along, and they're at that higher tick. It's not emotionally draining, and that's just who they are. Their ego is protecting that identity of being great, and it becomes smooth rolling. That's the goal. But here's the thing, is where they all overlap separately is where the problem comes in. So if I look at where my beliefs overlap my thoughts, well, in between there, if my beliefs are good, like I'm strong and powerful, but when I show up to a moment, my thoughts say, well, but are you? Well, now I have this weak mindset, right? And so actually the mindset is the separation, or it's the connection, I guess, overlapping of where your beliefs and your thoughts are. And that mindset we have sometimes really becomes like a weak point if I can't get my brain to cognitively actually align with what my belief is, that I am powerful, and I question it. And then I show up halfway, and again, the wheel goes wrong. The other alignment, if you look, the overlap is beliefs and actions. And if I have this set of beliefs that are like, hey, no matter what you do, you should always pick up your dog poop whenever your dog poops outside. But then what happens is my dog poops and I don't clean it up. Well, now where those two overlap, it's called integrity. If my beliefs and my actions don't align, I'm acting out of integrity. Even if it's a simple thing of saying like, I'm going to show up every day and do X, but you don't. Well, my actions and my beliefs don't show up, and I have a poor integrity. And when I have poor integrity of myself, I know it. So I don't have confidence in myself. I feel like a fraud if I step up and tell somebody this thing. Same with the mindset. Then what you have is actions and thoughts. Where actions and thoughts overline. If I say, hey, I'm going to the gym on Monday, I'm going to get that thing done, and then Monday shows up and I don't take the action, I'm acting out of commitment. I'm not committed to myself. I'm committed to nothing. And in fact, now I feel like, man, I can't even stay committed. Like I'm out of integrity. I have a poor mindset. And any of those things weaken the ideal identity's ability to show up and protect the identity, because your ideal identity has to have that really true sense of self for the ego to do its job correctly. Because if you really don't believe that that's who you are, then sure enough, that ego is going to be like, oh, well, I didn't get the workout in. I didn't make the call. No big deal. And it easily it can't be put in place. So what I look at is like your actions, they lead everything, but there's also the connection of your beliefs and your thoughts that are running in the background that create that ideal identity that you've dissected and said, well, literally what we do is we say, who do we know in the world that's like who we are, that's like who we want to be like, right? Could be a mom, it could be a dad, could be a superstar, athlete, doesn't matter. And then you have to go and look at what they do, not what they say. Like, what are their daily actions? And you'll hear it in interviews, we'll hear it in podcasts, we'll see it on their on their posts on social media. You'll see it, but we're just consuming it at face value. And I make my clients go through and dissect it. Like, what do you see them doing every day? Genuinely, like, what do they say? Like, dig in a little bit deeper. Okay, so if they're doing that action, what are the thoughts they have to make that take place when the time comes? Like, if they go and, maybe they're I don't know, let's say they're going out and getting these crazy big guests for their podcast. What are the thoughts they have to have in their head to take that action confidently?
Sure.
Right. And so on top of that, okay, so if that's the thought they have, what belief do they have in the background that runs towards that thought? And some people, like, we think they're crazy. If you look at some of the people killing it in the world professionally in certain areas, if you sat and talked with them for a while, they don't think like you and I. That's the goal. Like, they're above us in certain areas. We'll call it, in my perspective, go above us. Not everybody's, right? Everybody's different. But it's like that person, I want to know why they think that way. I want to know what allows them to take that action. And then I look at mimicking that part of it. And I don't mimic it to be like them. I mimic it with micro actions. What are the things if they're doing 20 things, what are the one or two I can put in quickly and then keep in place and roll? Is it reading a book? Is it getting a jog in? Is it making a crazy call that nobody would make? Like, what is that thing? And the more I do it, the more I believe, like, damn, that's what I do. And I start building my identity in that area. I have another anchor or another trait that makes me that person. And little by little, you can literally shift your identity to being more like that person, which creates more of their kind of life.
So ultimately, it kind of sounds what you're trying to do is belief kind of comes at the end of it. So it's kind of like at first you identify who you want to become, right? So it's not about and then you start to figure out what are the actions and thoughts that need to happen. So what are the thoughts? How does that person think? And then what does that person need to do? And then by doing that, you're almost proving to yourself that you are becoming that person. And then you start to believe it, which is so much more valuable than people that just kind of say, just, beat your chest in the mirror and tell yourself you're great every single morning. Or these, I believe in affirmations to some level, but I mean, there is like that when you can show yourself via results and action, it seems like it'd be much easier to prove to yourself that this is who I'm becoming.
Exactly. The thing is, we're trying to sometimes make other people believe it, but they're not going to believe it if you don't get yourself to believe it. That's the biggest key that most people don't grasp. And it's not just you saying like, I'm powerful and I'm strong and I should believe in myself. Because if the baseline of your subconscious doesn't believe that, you're not going to take the confident actions when you have to. So it's like, I hate people that are just like, believe in yourself. You're amazing. You could do it. Because Because what they're doing is they're giving you this false sense of hope that, like, think about events. I hate that, like, I don't go to events as much anymore, although I love events because I love the energy. But I think there's always this thing missing, which is no one in most events addresses the moment when you go home and all this fire and energy you have disappears because it's you at 11 o'clock at night in front of a computer and there's nobody there next to you pumping you up or on a stage making you feel good.
Right.
And that's the moment where people need to, like, figure out, how do I get that feeling in that moment? And you get that feeling if yesterday or during the day you did something incredible and that you sat in that chair like, holy crap, I'm amazing. And you believe it because you took the action. And that's what I try to teach. That's what I try to get people to go towards, is like, how do I get you to take the right actions in the right direction and do them little by little, develop this sense of confidence because you've accomplished something. And I can sit there and say, like, this is who I am. Because here's the thing, you don't ever want to let the person that you love the most down. And if you think about how we like I say, outwardly love like a wife or a spouse, we don't want to let them down. So we'll go out of our way to really, like, show up. And the problem is, for us, we'll talk about self-love and people say, like, oh, love yourself. Really what it is like, do you take actions like you would for someone else that you love? And what that is, like, do you show up? Are you on time? Are you consistent? Like, for my wife, hell yes. But if I don't do it for myself, then how am I going to have the confidence to take the next step or to show up the way I'm supposed to? And that really comes from not letting yourself down. And we usually don't love ourselves because in the past, we've tried something and failed, or we started and stopped, or whatever it is. And we know our dark parts. So we're always kind of contemplating that. And we're always hardest on ourselves. So what we really have is this lack of, like, loving ourselves to the extent of going out of our way to show up for ourselves. So you literally have to go out of your comfort zone to accomplish something so that you can step back and look yourself in the say, man, I love you, man. Not that I don't love other people, but, like, I love you. You're a good dude. Now, you know what? Because I love you so much because of what you do, I'm not going to let you down, Ant. We're going to get home in time to get this podcast recorded so that I don't miss it. Like, I had to rush back here. Right? I'm going to show up. I'm going to make sure that
I appreciate that.
Oh, for sure, man. Like, we have to get to a point of comprehending self-love isn't just this, like, it's not always unconditional, unfortunately. I think internally it's not an unconditional love. I think we talk about that for other people. Like, I love my wife unconditionally, but it's conditional for us. If internally I don't do something, I have a lack of respect for myself. And I think that's where it falls short. If I have a lack of respect, who loves somebody they don't respect?
So this is good. So I think it gives a good strategic and tactical way someone can start to change their identity over time. So what happens on the dark side of this, right? So, you get these micro successes with your micro actions and you start to build a positive view. What if you start getting micro failures or large failures in your life and you start to have a negative belief? Then what do you do?
Yeah, and those are natural. That's what we have now. Like, to be honest, a lot of people are operating solely out of this negative aspect. And so what happens is we have these viewpoints of ourselves only based on what we didn't accomplish or didn't do. And for me, what I actually go through is this process where I'm like, hey, I really want to take a look at how do we reframe failures? Because what we have is in our life, really what it is we have these moments in time where something took place and I had this failure pop up. And then what I did is I stuck it in this horrible, super high level. And there's literally there's multiple levels of failure. So look at it kind of like this. You have what's called, like, abject failure at the very top. Like, this is the end of the world. There's no coming back. Like, oh, life's over, right? Then you have this structural failure, which is like, hey, it broke. Like, it was almost, it's broken. It's like, it's not all the way out, but this thing is, like, really, really broken, right? There's going to be what's called glorious failure, like going out with a bang, like, oh, I tried, boom, it failed, try something else, right? Then you have what's called common failure. Like, you're something happened, like, oh, I'm sorry, like, it commonly happens, I apologize, what the thank you was made for. Then you have what's called version failure, which is version 1.0. I put it out as best I could now. I knew it was going to break, but I'm waiting for it to kind of break so I can figure out what's wrong with this version.
Okay.
So I can improve the version. And then we have what's called predicted failure. Sports, athletes, this is where coaching comes in. I go in a field knowing that I'm going to mess up, which is why I have a coach to yell at me. I'm predicting I'm going to mess it up, right? So what we do is we go into situations, a relationship, professionally, whatever it is, and something goes wrong, and we pop it way at the top and say, it's the end of the world, right? So, like, if it's a relationship and I have this person I've been with for so long and it fails, it's the end of the world. I'm never going to be loved again. I can't do this. Oh, and we never, and we wall people off and we close our hearts up when really, like, at the end of the day, it was like a common or a version failure.
Sure.
Like, logically we know, like, hey, this may not have been the person for me, This version relationship 1.0 of my life. Well, let's go to 1.2, but now I got some insight from 1.0, right? Like it really just has to be this level of realizing that when you fail, you do not have to pop it in the abject end of the world bucket. And if we do that all the time, then of course you're going to feel like a loser. And of course you're going to have no motivation, because we're only focusing again on the negative most of the time as humans. And then on top of that, we're making all of our negatives way too negative. So when you have those moments, like logically step back and say, okay, how do I feel? I feel horrible. Now, don't get me wrong. Every one of these sucks. Like every one of them feels bad, because no one likes to fail. But if you can pull it back logically for a second and say, okay, great. Was this aversion or common or predicted, or what kind of failure was this? If it's like, all right, it's relationship, you know what? This is it's aversion failure. What did I learn? What do I got to fix? What do I got to navigate? Where was my fault? Like, okay, great. Now I'm going to put out iPhone 2, right? I'm going to put out version 2.0. And if we can operate more like that, then we can put some logic around the emotion we have of failure. Then you can actually take that, we call the silver lining from that, and pull it back and say, okay, great. That was the positive part of that negative, crappy situation. And we can roll. Like, perfect example. And I'm talking in relationships. I don't know why, but my head for some reason's there right now. But like in my marriage, I was divorced. My wife, she had an affair. Like my life was all over the damn place. And it took me having to go back and take a look at legitimately the version of that marriage. Like, where did I go wrong? Where did she go wrong? What was the situation? Like, what were the factors that kind of led up to that? And there's a realization of, at the end of the day, I had a part to play in that. It sucks, but like, it took two people to get to a point where she had to make a choice. She made a sucky choice, but it took two people to get there. And when I realized that there was that version and I had a control within that, I had to take ownership and eat that frog, and like, oh, I was part of that. But hey, I had a control. What if I change this? And so I tried to make version 2.0 of Anthony. And in doing so, like, my marriage is back 3 years after being divorced and custody battles and craziness with the kids. We're back and incredibly happy. We're new versions. We had identity. That's what I call it. It's like whole different concepts. So that's where I was like, if I always made it abject, I'd be running the streets doing craziness right now with my life and relationships, which would affect all parts of my life. But instead I was like, hey, what can I figure out from this? And I did, and it fixed everything.
Yeah, it's almost hard too, because I mean, I think people, you don't feel the feeling of failure isn't always proportional to the different bucket that you put it in, as you kind of described, right? Like you feel like everything is the most catastrophic, biggest failure in the world, and just the smallest things, and people have a hard time making it proportional. So like being reasonable and looking at it and separating yourself from it looks like it's a really helpful technique.
Yeah. I try to make things logical. Like, it's because a lot of people operate in an emotional space. We're just emotional humans all the time, but there's very few people that go in the space and say, how can I get my brain to wrap around how I feel? Because your brain, once you get a feel for it, can actually help adjust your emotions. Like you can, like, I think I was talking before we got on, but like I have an ability to control my emotions in really high intensity situations. Sports help with that. But even when like things are going crazy, like I know that if I want to have a great life, it's going to be comprised of great days. If I want a great day, I got to have great moments. And how I think through and feel the current moment will affect my action, that will affect the quality of the next moments of my life.
Yeah.
So if I want to have a solid life, it's like, okay, dude, you can't freak out all day, every day because the dog pooped in the house. Like, relax, man. Like, Anthony, it's going to be okay, dude. All right. Okay. And like, I have this control of my emotions because my brain can figure out where it goes and I can logically think through it, which gives me this, oh, you're just tripping, man. Relax. Ah, yeah, you are. Okay. Let's get back to being happy. And I can go that route.
That's all. I got a question for you. So like, what's a hack, like just a really quick tip or hack that you can give for just staying optimistic, staying positive all throughout the day? Like, I mean, when you jumped on the call, I was just like, holy man, he's ready to go. He's so happy, excited, like what is something you can do that give everybody, all the listeners, a little simple technique to stay positive like that?
It's one of those ones that everybody always hears. And I don't get why people think that cliche things actually don't work, because cliche is cliche because it works. But literally stop and like think like, what is great about this moment? Like, what's great about this day? What's great about my life? So every night, my kids and my wife and I, we sit on the dinner table every night. And this one thing we do is called good day, bad day. What was a good part of your day? What was the bad part of your day? And the bad parts, we try to put a positive spin on it, every one of them. And so all I'm doing is training my kids and my brain, and my wife at times too, to think in a pathway of like, what could be positive from this? Because if you practice something, you'll get good at it. And the way that I do it is like, even in the middle of crazy moments, I think my big thing, like I have a red flag that goes off when I feel a certain way. When I get really angry or I feel like crappy or something happens, it's now I've practiced so much this trigger that says, oh, pull back for a second, think this through. And it's that simple moment. I'll literally be like, all right, that sucks. Okay, well, I can't do anything about it. Okay, I got to figure this thing out. Let me just go ahead and spend some time figuring this out. And then I'll work myself through it. Then I find a way to have this positive perspective, or I have a different spin off on it, and it moves me in a better way. Like, so it really is just for me, like I have a perspective on what could have been. And also, like I grew up in an environment that was not great. So just knowing, like, if you look at any prison in America, 75% of the inmates are former foster kids. Like 51% of the homeless population is former foster kids. Like less than 1% will ever graduate college. So just knowing those statistics, and like I played in the NFL, my first business ran for 10 solid years. Like statistically, I'm an anomaly. And it's, I think at the end of the day, for me, I have this perspective of how bad it really could be. Now, you don't have to have gone through the craziness I went through to have that. Just think back to the moment in time when in your life, like I'm never going to smile again. Like right by this myself and realize at some point past that you were smiling, laughing, giggling with your friends, right? So if that could happen, just do it now. Like if you had that happen, just think about the fact like, hey, at the end of I was somewhere I was at that was really super dark, and I was like, I'm never going to smile again. And then realize like, oh crap, I smiled after that. All right, let me get back to that as fast as I can, because I don't like how I feel right now. And then it always sets the tone for me of like, I'm going to go out on this day, and no matter what happens, it's not going to be as bad as that was. And if it is, then hey, I'm going to learn some new tools today.
Well, it's a lot of it's about just it sounds like it's just taking control back for your emotions, right? Like to realize that it's a choice. It's ultimately a choice of how you want to feel in this moment. We don't control, like we like to feel like we don't control our emotions, but at some point we can override that. And to decide to be happy or decide to be positive, decide to look at this experience differently and put a new perspective or lens on it could totally change it, right?
Yeah. And I mean, honestly, I identify as a person who has control of my emotions. I've said it a couple times here, but I say that, and my ego protects that with the action of when something crazy goes wrong and I'm in my car with my wife and kids, like I'm the guy who says that, therefore I'm going to do that. Like I own up to it, and then it actually becomes part of who I am. So if you tell yourself, oh, I'm not good at controlling my emotions, well, hey, guess what's going to happen? You're going to make that story true by not controlling your emotions. Mm-hmm. It's going to be a cop out, and you're going to have effects in your life, and you're going to throw it back to, well, it's just because I'm not good at it. Same wheel takes place I talked about earlier. You go back to the end, see, I'm not very good at controlling my emotions. Well, just change it, damn it. Stop.
Yeah, I mean, can you imagine like if you go out there and you just start to decide, you tell yourself, I'm a happy person. Like I'm just a happy person. I'm an optimist. I'm an optimistic person. I mean, naturally, you're going to start to just change. Just something as simple as telling yourself that and telling yourself that story, you're going to start to change into being a more positive person.
Yeah, you choose the action. So if you dissect a person you want to be like, and you realize that one of their anchors is they choose to be happy, then you take action with that. So when something goes wrong, be the creepy person that people are like, how are you not freaking out right now? You just tell them, hey, it could be worse. Like, just do that. And over time, they're like, oh, that's just who you are. You're like, yeah, that is who I am. And then life is lived better. Because at the end of the day, life is just a collection of experiences, good, bad, and different. That's really, really all it is. Like memories are experiences. So it's a collection of those. I want to collect as many great ones as I can. And if I have the control of that, hell, I'm going to do that. So that's what I do.
Yeah. I mean, look how much power that gives you too. You have the ability to control the amount of positive experiences in your life. And that is like, whoa, when you think about it, you know,
and people, 50
to 100% of my life could be positive if I choose to.
And everybody, there's always that person that's like, yeah, but you don't know what I'm going through. You didn't have this happen. It's like, dude, everything's relative to every person. Like just because something crazy happened to you, like at the end of the day, it may not be hard for somebody else, or what was easy for you could be hard for somebody else, right? So one, it's relative. Two, is whenever you get to the point of having someone say, yeah, but you didn't go through this and you don't get it. It's not as easy to do that. My thought is the only reason you're there right now is because somewhere in your life, you don't want to have to take ownership of the fact that you had control over that. Because the reason people are there is because they feel helpless. You don't get this. You don't know what that's like. And it's because in their head, they're like, well, I'm helpless. I can't do anything about that. Don't condone me or condemn me for something I can't have control of because you just don't get it. but it's very difficult to take back a power of something that really has to be a sucky ownership.
Yeah.
Like when I had to do it in my marriage, it was a sucky ownership to say, damn it, I was part of the reason that my wife stepped out on me. I mean, it was a really, I mean, as a former NFL linebacker, you know, how hard that was. Like, dude, it ripped away like so many layers of this bravado I had, but I found a peace and a wholeness. And so the biggest thing is like, you only get to that place where you're telling everybody, or like hearing me right now say that, and you're thinking, yeah, but you just don't get it, because you're not willing to go back and say, where was my part in this problem? And when you can do that, and you can take ownership of that, and you can legitimately start changing things, then what happens is the actions that you'll do in the future will be different. Therefore, the outcome will be different. You'll be able to actually be a guy like we're sitting here talking about. Yeah, you got control. There's no more like I'm helpless. It's like, actually, I have control of that. I messed that up. Sucks, but I won't next time.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome, man. And, you know, there's so much good stuff with that. And I have I think I have two more questions here for you, you know, before we wrap up. And the one thing I wanted to ask was just what is, you know, we kind of talked about a lot of, I mean, you have so many different shifts you went through in your life. Yeah. What would you say is the most challenging one that you had to overcome, and how did you kind of overcome it? And how did you tell me where you were and where you arrived at?
Yeah. I think for me, it's the ego. The ego, as much as it's a positive thing, well, in my head, positive, it has its negative aspects. And I call the ego everyone's greatest obstacle. It's this thing that always gets in our way because we don't want to have anybody see us sweat. And it's even worse as an American, or really anybody, but like we're in a society with social media now where everybody's got to see the great part of you, and there can be no bad. And if there's any bad, like, oh, you know, shut up. Like, it's weird, but it's like people don't step back and say, man, this ego gets in my way, because here's where it gets in the way in a couple aspects. And it was for me in a lot of areas, like in my business, it showed up for sure. But it was this thought that if I succeed in any way, then I'm taking myself down and I'm less than. And the ego told me, and the ego tells everybody, ego tells you that you know something or you got that. And so what it does is it stops you in your tracks from now getting better. Because if somebody shows up to you and says, hey, man, you're talking too much in these meetings, you kind of got to quiet it down or people aren't going to like you. Well, if you're like, no, you're crazy, you don't even get it, like, let's just do that, right? And then you continue to do it. Well, if something goes wrong, that's all your fault. Like, you had a choice, right? But here's what also you didn't realize is in doing that, that person tried to give you insight, you know, stop this gold mine of information of someone that could keep feeding you insights to help you get better. And also, you never got better. So you take that same attitude somewhere else. So it happened to me in business, happened in my relationship too. But business, what happened was I was like doing this business thing and it wasn't running well. And people would come in, and you got to do this. You got to do this. And I'm like, no, I played in the NFL. Yeah, I'm a great trainer. I got my degree in this. Everyone's going to want to train with me. And I had this stupid ego that would not let someone come in who had been down my path and give me insight on how to do it better. So what happened was that person stopped giving me insight. I stopped the gold rush of great information. On top of that, I never gave myself permission to fix it. So it stayed broken. And so because of that, I ended up close to bankruptcy like 3 times before my idiot self woke up. It's like, dude, I just need help. Like, let me go ahead and drop the ego a little bit. Like, hey, dude, you're right. I'm breaking this. How do I fix it? And that simple thing for me was one of the catalysts to me going from, at one point, I was 2 weeks away from bankruptcy in my gym business. I had like 3 years left of my lease, hadn't paid rent for 3 months, owed $16,000, had $4,000 in the bank, NFL money was gone. On top of that, I had like 2 weeks to pay it, and we're only making maybe $4,000 a month. I'm like, there's no way I'm gonna do this. And I literally stripped down like my heart and said, I don't know what I'm doing. I need help. And I took every dime I had left and hired a consultant, which was for me pulling the ego back, saying, look, I don't know what I'm doing right now. And it was that little catalyst that gave me the sense of like, oh, other people know more. And if I'm smart, I'll listen. And if I'm smarter, I'll do it. And it has nothing to do with me or the quality of my persona. In fact, because I'm doing this, I believe it makes me a better human because I'm getting better as a human.
Yeah. Yeah. Just that humility. Gosh, that's good. You know, kind of even on that same subject, I'm sure this is part of it. And I remember I talked with your assistant about this too, but just share with me a little bit about, you know, your faith and how that's played along with your journey and your outlook on life.
Oh man, there's always got to be somebody bigger than you, dude. If there's nobody bigger than you, then you're going to think that everything you do is great, even when it's not great. That's a big problem. I think that I never really, as a kid growing up, had that. I've watched it in my wife. I think one of the things, like for me, I came into faith at a young age, like around like 14, 15. I don't know if it's young, but for me, it was younger for someone to really like walk into it. But like I was going through some craziness in life. I was actually getting, opportunities to go take college trips to different schools. And I had this teammate that kind of like pulled me to the side and like poured into me in my faith. And then like a trip home, I get picked up on, I want to say like on a trip back from Washington State in a college recruiting trip. And some dude in a gray van with like, long brown hair to his shoulders, this dude, I kid you not. And it sounds so weird, maybe bad, but the dude looked like Jesus. I say it, and then people are like, "Here, all right." I'm like, "Dude, the guy legit looked like Jesus." So he's like, the whole way home, pouring into me about faith. And I remember I stopped before, like a block before my house, and I prayed and accepted Christ in my life, and I've been saved since. And the big thing for me is I always had this as part of him in the back of my head of like, there's always somebody higher, somebody greater than me. So because of that, like I'm not just serving me one. So I feel like what I've gone through in life, it's no longer mine. It's somebody else's gift. So the stories I tell, the experience I've had, what I learn, it was all done so that I could actually gift it back. Because I realize that people that go through what I go through, they don't come out having clear thoughts like I have, having a sense of control of themselves or having a compassion or empathy. Like they don't, and I'm aware of that. Therefore, I realized that wasn't by accident. So I was put in that craziness to be able to give back. So there's that part of it that drives me from a sense of like, it's no longer like when you have a story is not for you. Like a story is to be told and a life is to be lived. So live my life, tell the story. That's one part of it. But like whenever you don't have this bigger picture above you, and I'm not saying it has to be my God or anything specific, but like my wife was at a point where she wasn't in any way like a person of faith before we got divorced. And it let her just run her life in a way where she thought she was the queen. And, she led her friend group and she did her whole thing. And this is not me bashing my wife by any means. This is me explaining the situation, right? She just, the buck stopped with what she wanted to do. And then with the change for us a lot for our marriage was realize like there's someone greater and there's a bigger purpose, there's a bigger picture, and there's a right way. And what happens is when you are, when you're trying to get to an end result, for the most part, the right way will get you there. But if you're going your way, you're not going to get there unless it's the right way, right? So your way has to follow the path of the right way. And for me, faith was one direction, right? It was faith to be a great human, a great supporter, great server. But even if it's in your business, right? If you're going your way, odds are it's not the right way typically, or you'd already be there. And you're going to keep hitting your head against the wall, right? It's just going to be like, why don't you just choose the right way to go about things, man? And when you choose the right way, it's usually hard. It's difficult because it's abnormal to you. But just like faith would be, right? But it's abnormal. But once you start staying the course of this right way and you start nudging yourself action-wise or thought-wise or belief-wise in that same like direction, well, now you can get in the same path. And what's cool is if you do it with partners in business or a relationship like my wife, because we know what the right way is, we're both always trying to edge towards that way, not our way, which pulls away from the other person. So now we stay the course, and that's where it's showed up for my marriage, my business. I follow processes, even if they're not like something I'm used to. I'm like, well, if it worked, I'm going to do that thing, because even though I may not identify with it, the more I stay that course and have micro actions, the more I become that identity of that person in my business, the more I get the result I'm looking for. And just everywhere it shows up.
God, yeah, that's awesome. That is so powerful. Anthony, wow, man, this was some good stuff. Deep, motivating, inspiring, man. You've done so many cool things. What are you working on today? What are you kind of working on in your business, or, do you have any books coming out? Like, how can people connect with you and learn more about your stuff?
Yeah, man. I mean, if you want to follow or just find out where I'm at, I'm on Instagram at Anthony Trucks. The things I'm working on are actually in the background. I'm in the process of having a conversation with a couple publishers about a book called All Shift, which that's what I want to call it. As long as they don't change the name, it'll be All Shift. How to master identity to make shift happen. That's kind of the idea. We'll see if it goes with that. Then besides that, I have a couple of programs, but my big thing is helping people make that identity shift. And it's something you can tactically do. And I've built a full structure around it. I've spent so many like hours, years now behind the scenes of just with people. And when I was a personal trainer in session, listen to people talk. And then I have so many textbooks and scholarly journals on psychology and how our brains work. And so I just really wanted to be able to create something that took all that brain work and then simplified it down to easy to understand information and applicable actions. And I put it into a structure of what I teach. So I have clients that I coach through this actual structure to make that shift in their life. And then there's a program I do, primarily the people I like working with or entrepreneurs. I work with anybody, obviously, but entrepreneurs, I have a different place in my heart because it's a desire to create an impact in the world that creates freedom for your life. And so I have a program called 7-Figure Identity. And it's not that you have to make 7 figures, but it's like the person that, when you think 7 figures, you think a sense of freedom. It's going to be some kind of money freedom, some kind of time freedom to choose what you want to do. When you make good income, it provides an opportunity to facilitate good relationships. So time spent with your loved ones, or to get in better shape, whatever it is. And so it may be someone wants to make 6 figures, doesn't matter what it is. But the idea is there's a different set of ideal identity anchors that you have to be able to create that world for yourself. And so in that program, I go over how to make that shift. And I also infuse very simplistic business tools, because a lot of people, there's so much information out there. It's like confusing. Like, what do? I got to build 70 websites?
Oh, yeah.
Right. So what I do is I tell people, like, look, the thing you need to do is have no tech, no automation. Just build the business structure out in a way you can track it without tech. But then the business, as things pick up, it'll tell you what you need. It'll tell you when you need to get a follow-up process that's automated. It'll tell you when you need to have a different sales conversion tool. It'll tell you when you have to do more for your social stuff or what to do. But if you jump in full bore without a plan, like, you fall apart. So I just try to get people to plan, man.
Yeah, I think that's really valuable. That's going to help so many people because, I mean, I know when I was just starting out, I had to hire a coach just to kind of get the framework and consolidate everything into something that to make it real. We talk about micro actions, what am I going to do? Where do I start? What am I good at? All that kind of stuff. So having, some type of tools and courses and being able to work with someone like you where you can find that out is, I mean, it could save hundreds of thousands of dollars, to be honest. Now, that's not even an exaggeration.
No, not at all, man. I've spent over $500,000 on my education. I've been in so many groups and masterminds, books, courses. It's ridiculous. So I take it back and I'm like, all right, what would I have needed way back when I started? Or when I was going through the process thinking I had it, like, there's a lot of people that are like on paper and social, they look like they're doing it, but they're really not. So those are the ones I'm like, hey, it's okay. Just come on, I'll help you out. And that's it. But I mean, if people want to know more about that, you can book a call with my team. It's a strategy call. It's trucksteam.com. It's super simple. They hop on a phone call and kind of figure out where you're at, what you need, and if our programs work for you.
Yeah. Awesome. One last piece of advice, Anthony, for the group, if you could talk to the person that's just kind of in the cycle, they want to break to that next level, their business is just right on the edge, but they just need that X factor. They just need something to come through. What would you say to them?
I would say the biggest thing that most people don't do with business is they don't look at, like, what is the business structure? And nobody even knows what the hell business structure is most of the time, but here's what you have to have in place in order for your business to run smooth. For the most part, there's 7 to 8 steps, and I'll give you what I call the core 6. The first step, step 0, is really get clear on the message, what you do, so that whenever you build your business, people know what the hell they're getting into. Because if you don't have clarity on what your message is or what the end result is, posting things on social media of your breakfast aren't going to get you clients. You gotta have something you're doing, man. So step 1 is get awareness. So find some way to create, either by social media or paid advertisement, something that creates awareness for your business. Find a way to get leads in, something that gets people to actually give you their contact information. You can go proactively and prospect, or send ads. You can go, kind of reactively by posting, like some people do. But again, if you're clear in what you do, people will reach out to you. The next one's follow up, which is a relationship. What is the relationship you're trying to establish, and how are you doing it? Are you giving phone calls? Are you doing, Facebook Messenger, automated emails? What does that look like? It doesn't need to be 7,000 emails, but what are the first few emails that they should get to learn who you are, what you do, how you do it? From there should be something that gets them into a conversion conversation, which is a sales conversation. It could be a sales page. It could be a phone call. It could be a masterclass, whatever you want it to be. What is the thing that people do to be able to actually sign up with you? That's the one that so many people miss, is they do these cool things and people oh, what do you do? I do this. But then they have no idea that person that asked what you did, their lead, and you're now following up. And if you have nothing to offer them in terms of hop on this call to then work with me, you're going to fall short 1,000,000 times out of 1,000,000 times, because there's nothing that you got to put in place. So something that has that conversation of come join me. And then you have to deliver on the promise. Part of it is you have to have something to deliver. So when you're in that sales conversation, you have confidence of what you're actually selling somebody or having them take part in. But then the next part is deliver an experience. For me, it's all about what's the experience somebody has when they've spent some money for them on themselves through you, right? If it's a product or a service, what is the thing that they experience? If somebody pays you a good chunk of money, is it okay, cool, thanks, talk to you soon? Or is it this thing where they feel like they're part of something. What is that experience? And from there, you can choose this one, which is called an ascension. We'll call it an upsell, right? What's the next thing they need from you? Could happen immediately, could happen months from now, if they finish a program, whatever it is. And the last one's recycle. How do you take the great result that you got from this client or that the client got with you and make sure the rest of the world knows it? And if you do it right, it creates more awareness, and lo and behold, the process starts again with a new person.
Awesome. That's gold, by the way.
Thank you.
That is some gold. No, thank you so much, Anthony, for jumping on the call today. You know, you're a busy guy. You're always all over the place doing so many good things for people out there. And I wanted to thank you. Thank you on behalf of the listeners too for jumping on this show.
Well,
You said you could go to, what was it, trucksteam.com, or what was it?
Yeah. Trucksteam.com. Yeah.
Trucksteam.com.
Yeah, book a call with the team and they'll walk you through how we do what we do. It's awesome.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. Once again, guys, my name's Aaron Armstrong. You can follow me on Instagram at AaronArmstrong33, or you can go to my website, aaronjarmstrong.com, to learn more about me, where this podcast will also be available for you guys to re-listen to, download, whatever you want to do, and share with somebody. Guys, if you enjoy these podcasts and you enjoy the guests that we're having on, please, whatever platform you're listening on, comment, subscribe, download, share this with people that need to hear this message, because we want to get this message out there to as many people, because we're not doing this for money. We're not doing this for any other reason other than to help you guys and spread positive vibes throughout the world. So with that said, guys, thank you so much. Be somebody.